And here's the thing. Over the past few weeks, you've heard us talking about one simple truth. AI is changing everything, but it can't replace the heart of leadership. It won't build trust, it won't resolve conflict, and it won't create culture. That's our job. Today's session is about cutting through the noise of AI hype and getting real about what leadership looks like. In just 45 minutes, you'll hear how leading differently matters, and you'll learn practical strategies you can use starting tomorrow. Number one, stay human while leading with AI. Number two, keep trust and connection front and center. Focus where it matters most. This isn't theory. This is real leadership in real time. So we're excited. Let's get started. I'd like to introduce our speakers here today, leading us through this important conversation. We have Catherine Kennedy, who's GM of ISV and partner development at Microsoft, and they're thought leaders and people leaders in this artificial intelligence space. And we also have Gabriel Manassas-Jones. He is an international leader, recently at Netflix, and actually he joins us today from Bogota, Colombia. So thank you for joining us, Gabriel.
It's a pleasure.
And also we have our CEO and founder, Audrey McGuckin. You know that we're all about human-centered leadership that really has an impact. So we're excited to have these three thought leaders with us today. And Audrey, would you like to get us kicked off here?
Yes, goodness. And as we think about this concept of human leadership and AI, I want to kind of double down on the human leadership. And I look around the room, the virtual room. What gets me really excited is seeing Jed dialing in from Scotland, and then seeing Bernardo dialing in from Guadalajara. And then David Lang, who's joining us from the Cleveland Clinic. And you're right next to Sarah Shirai, who's also at the Cleveland Clinic. So it warms my heart to see all the beautiful faces. I see some of my Jable friends. I see Benny Ortega and Keith Cochran, and I'm just going around the room. So honestly, so delighted that we get to have this conversation. Here's the deal for me. I taught at Harvard Business School for 5 years, and we had the most incredible professors in the room. At the end of the week-long sessions, I would do an evaluation to say, tell me which session you loved the best. Every single time it was the peer learning where they got the most value. And you're all peers in this room. You're all leaders from different industries with different perspectives, and we want to leverage your learning as we go through this next 45 minutes. My promise to you is that we'll create the conditions for that learning, pulling in folks from the audience as well as Catherine Kennedy and Gabriel. And a quick story about Gabriel and how we met. We both lived in Singapore. We were both living in Singapore, and our daughters became best friends. And here we are 8 years later, and we're reconnected again. So just a quick story about me and Gabriel. So thank you everyone for joining. This is an opportunity for, we call this leading with empathy, which is getting a perspective from those in the room. Now we have to do that virtually. So please, I'd love you to hop in the chat and think about the 1 or 2 words. What has your attention as you think about AI? Don't be shy. Don't feel like it's something that somebody else might not be thinking about. Let's just name it. What is on your mind as you think about AI? Here's what I'll tell you as we're gathering these inputs, and I'll have Catherine Sherman pull them together for us. What day is it? It's Tuesday. So, or actually, yes, it's Tuesday. So Monday, I was with clients. All of the conversation was AI. Sunday evening, I was out for dinner with friends. What do you think came up in the topic? Saturday afternoon, I was with friends. AI came up. Friday night, it came up as well. It's coming up at work as well as in our social lives as well. But Catherine, what are you seeing in the chat?
I love when we crowdsource because I learn something every time. You know, we started off with time savings. Catherine Kennedy says security. How can it enhance communication? Marna says accuracy. What's real anymore? Says Heidi. Ethics. It's exciting. Knowing how to use it. But then we have, you know, the reality, job losses and efficiency, and how do we use it to do our most efficient, smart work and save time?
Yeah, a lot of perspectives and all the way on the spectrum, right? And so imagine if you're leaders in this room, imagine what's on the minds of your people, the people in your teams, and how are you crowdsourcing them to get their perspective? Catherine, are we going to go ahead and launch a poll next?
Yes. So, you know, we always like to really understand what you're thinking and what's on your mind. So I've just launched a poll, and the question is, how often are you currently using these AI tools? Daily, weekly, occasionally, or rarely? And I'm just seeing these responses come in. Right now we have 80%, and spoiler alert, most of us are using this every day. Let me share these results with you. Striking, 53% are using AI daily, 33% weekly, occasionally is 13, and only one person is rarely using it. So don't worry, it's anonymous. It's okay. We have one more question, and really this is to ground our conversation. How would you rate your proficiency with AI tools? Are you an expert? Are you really using them to do that strategic work? Are you using them for daily tasks? Are you still, you know, learning the ropes? And some people, you know, maybe you're not sure, you're not totally confident using them yet. Oh, wow, here we go. And I'm going to share the results with you as well. We have about 56% of us, although we're using it daily, are still experimenting, still learning how to leverage that. 34% are competent, using them regularly for tasks and getting some of those efficiencies. 7% are expert, and you know, some of us just aren't sure yet.
Yeah. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah.
And you know, we did a crowdsource of the people in this room. But what about some of the data? Let's kind of frame this in our reality. Here's what the data is telling us. 74% globally, employees are already using AI. Whether we like it or not, they're already using AI. And yet only 34% feel trained to use it effectively. That's a pretty significant gap. And here's how we think about it. That's like putting a little kid in a car and saying, off you go and drive. And imagine the implications. Imagine the implications of what that could look like for your business. Imagine what the vulnerabilities are. Imagine what some of the risks are. And everybody using AI, and yet we haven't really trained them or given them perspective. This next image talks about the famous story and metaphor of the hare and the tortoise. And we all know how that story ends, right? That in the end, the tortoise finishes over the crossing line and wins the day. But what does that mean in real life? I'm going to pull Catherine Kennedy in, and we'll stay on this image as Catherine shares with us her perspective from Microsoft, one of the top companies in the world, that are not only using AI, but at the front end and the leading edge of AI. Catherine, let's have you hop in.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Audrey. First of all, thank you for having me. Yeah, happy to share. Let's be real. AI is moving faster than the tortoise or the hare. It's moving at warp speed and faster than, frankly, any of us can even comprehend. And so the grounding that we use at Microsoft, and truly our North Star, is guided by 6 principles. And those 6 principles are anchored in our values that we believe should guide AI development and use. And I'll share with you our 6 guiding principles are fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And I'll be honest with you, it's not a checklist, although it can sound like it. It's really, truly our compass. And frankly, we apply these core principles to a very disciplined process, and we use it to define the business use cases, to capture the business opportunities and deliver meaningful and measurable outcomes. And so that's how we slowed down, frankly, to go fast. And we are going at hyper speed right now in the areas of AI development. And some may say, in fact, that we're leading the way. And frankly, what I'm most proud of is the fact that in everything we're doing, we're staying anchored in this North Star. And you can see it in how we lead, but also how we're not just leading with tech, we're leading with these principles, and it's built into every layer of our stack. And so I'll pause there. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, I'd love to hop in. One of the things that we promise to our friends, our clients, and our network is this practical orientation to all of these sessions. So here's the thing I want people to get on this call. If you haven't defined your North Star, if you haven't defined your principles of AI, I highly recommend that you start to get leaders around the table to do that, right? And we can see Microsoft's in the chat: fairness, reliability, safety, privacy, security, and inclusiveness. What are your principles that's guiding your employees? Because if you think about that image that we showed with the car and the little kid driving, everybody's off to the races. They are all driving already, and we can't account for every single thing. But how do you give them a North Star? Anybody else, anybody want to hop in from our audience to say either you haven't created it and you're planning to, or you have, and here's how it's working for you? Let me see if there's anybody who wants to come off mute. I'll keep my eyes peeled here.
I'll share.
Yes.
So I do a lot of recruiting and leadership development for Libra Industries, and to kind of help utilize ChatGPT, AI, whatever you want to refer it to. One thing that is helpful is when you're going through resumes and job descriptions, if you have a large pocket or a large candidate database that have been applying, to kind of help find those gaps and strengths, something that would take me normally 4 hours, if not more, cuts that nearly almost more than in half. And then it allows me to strategize and have more time working on my career development side of my role, because although they do coincide, it's 2 different hats that I wear that I have to kind of alternate my thinking. So to be able to cut that time in half, if not more, by going through resumes and job descriptions and find, that best fit before I go in and phone screen, because again, you can't take the human out of these things. And that's the most important part. Yeah, the ChatGPT AI can find the technical aspects of strengths and weaknesses, but if that person's not a cultural fit, then it's not going to move forward in a positive direction. So that's where that human aspect comes in still, and you can't 100% lean on that tool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Megan, an example of how you're using it. But I want to go back to this idea of North Star, because we cannot account for everybody and all of their work. And Catherine, when I worked in Jabil, I had the opportunity to work with Satya, the CEO at Microsoft, and he's known for empathy. He's known for creating an incredible culture, and he's known for this tech leading with innovation. Can you share with us, how did those two intersect? This big idea of leading with AI and yet Satya's real desire for this culture?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love the work that Jabil and Microsoft did together and continue to do. The one thing I've really observed, and frankly that I've embodied from observing Satya and the rest of our ELT is they truly lead with intention and the values. And yes, tech is part of what we do, but they truly lead with the intention and the values. And so they're very, very clear and focused on that. What I notice is oftentimes some leaders get distracted. For example, they'll confuse AI tools with transformation. We see this often, right? But one of the core things that Microsoft has truly, that Satya has brought in, is really keeping trust at the center of everything that we do. And trust isn't built by deploying AI. It's built by designing it with humans at the center of everything, and with trust at every layer in the AI lifecycle. And what I mean by that, and you probably saw it in my note in the chat, is embedding security across every single layer. So it's two parts to the equation is how I would describe it. And then we operationalize that trust through our responsible AI framework that I mentioned earlier, but also through our Secure Future initiative. And at Microsoft, you can even see mention of this in our earnings reports. This is all public, so please feel free to leverage this. With the AI framework, as an example, we invited our partners and our ecosystem to be part of this responsible AI framework. We invited policymakers. So it's not about control, it's about collaboration and collaborating with a wider audience so that we have everyone bought in around these values. And so again, like I said before, it's not a policy, it's a practice. And we do embed it. I mean, it's across Azure AI to GitHub Copilot. For example, we embed transparency, accountability, and fairness into every layer. And Satya made this mandate very, very clear, and we report on it in our earnings. So there's that accountability layer, not just to our shareholders, but to policymakers, to our customers, to our partners, and our ecosystem at large. And frankly, that's how we lead with trust, and not just tech, but also it reinforces that empathy element, because you have to trust in this technology or none of this works, frankly. And that's a long-winded way of answering your question, Audrey.
No, I love that. And here's what I want people to take away from this conversation is AI is critical. It sits at the center of a lot of the things that we do, but trust and human-centered leadership are also important. Here's the other thing I want people to really think about is, how does this work with your customers? Bernardo, I'm not going to pick on you, but I want you to think about, what are 2 or 3 of your customers and what are they concerned about? What are they thinking about? And how do you give them confidence that you're leveraging AI and yet you're also being human-centered, not only with your interactions with your employees, with your interactions with your customers, and your interactions with your stakeholders, because we heard Catherine say, Satya invited our partners and stakeholders to the table. Now, Bernardo, I see you came off mute there, so let me see if you want to hop in.
Hey, Catherine. Hello, everyone. Well, actually, my main customer right now, it's one of those guys which is a big contributor in this AI industry, it's NVIDIA, right? Then now I was taken into this world in a faster, in a stronger way. Then all those topics you are talking in here are very important for me, because the guys that are working with me are a little bit ahead of me. I'm just joining the team in the past few months. Then I need to get involved in this new mindset, how those tools are gonna be used, and how we can lead the team. to take the best for those without jeopardizing their thinking about how necessary they're going to be in the future, because everybody's going to keep being necessary. Then this is very interesting for me.
Yes. And what I hear, and without putting words in your mouth, Bernardo, is that you're on a learning journey. And some people you interact with are ahead of you, and some people might not be, but you have a leadership role to play. This is not a tech play. This is a leadership play.
I agree, Audrey.
Thank you, Bernardo, for hopping in there. And I think this takes us beautifully. I'm going to have Gabrielle come in here next and really help us get grounded in what we're calling this human-centered leadership. Here's the thing that you'll hear people saying. AI is going to replace jobs, and we heard that in the chat, that was on somebody's minds, but it can't replace leadership. That's true. But here's the kicker. We have been used to a command and control leadership approach. For decades, it's been a command and control. So we think we can rely on human leadership, but not everybody has that capability. Not everybody has the capability of human-centered leadership. And what I'd like to do is have Gabrielle come in. Now, for those of us on the call that have been around for some time, we all know the story of the Netflix culture. Everybody tried to copy and paste the Netflix culture. And so how incredible is it that we have somebody who was part of developing that, somebody who was part of nurturing that, join us. So Gabrielle, let's hear your voice and let's hear some of your perspective in the room.
Yes, thanks, Audrey, and thanks for having me. And it's great to be here. And you're right. People try to copy Netflix culture, but culture is a means to an end. The end being the execution of the strategy to create growth and transform businesses. So it shouldn't be like copying and pasting. And it is the culture that fits your business. And leadership is an essential part of crafting a culture. And so what I'm going to share with you, it's an extrapolation of my learnings from Netflix, right? So some of the concepts that I'm going to share, you're not going to find them in the Netflix culture memo, right? And we're all learning, right? We don't have all the answers. So what required leadership we need in this era, because Catherine's point, things are moving so fast. As you mentioned, Netflix started less than 30 years ago, from mailing DVDs to creating, basically inventing the streaming category, to becoming now the largest content creator in the world. So think about Silicon Valley and Hollywood. So they basically reinvented themselves in under 30 years, right? And so they've proven that reinvention and the fast adaptation is possible. And I believe those cultural traits are going to be essential for every company going forward. And as I mentioned, leaders drive the cultural traits of a company. So as AI grows more powerful, the leaders who fully embrace AI will be the ones who are going to be able to drive organizations successfully into the future. So I see two great opportunities for leaders. One is, and someone mentioned it in the chat, what I call the efficiency opportunity, which is more, how do you use AI to reduce bureaucracy, to free up time, making work more productive for yourself and for everyone. And that's a smart thing to do. But to me, the critical piece is the leadership opportunity, right? So what do you do with the time that you're freeing up so that you amplify your leadership impact? And the key challenge here I see is like machines are going to get better, right? So we as leaders should become more human leaders, right? So becoming a more human leaders, the three key traits I see are leaders who are more humble, leaders who are more curious, and more courageous. And these are some of the elements I saw at Netflix that I think are going to help companies into the future. Let me unpack some of these elements. The humble piece. And the first one is very basic. Like, you should know yourself as a leader, your strengths, your gaps, your blind spots. You cannot lead others if you don't know how to lead yourself, right? Second element is like, you should serve your teams, right? Sharing context, mentoring, staying close to people, connecting with them, and acting on their needs. And finally, the third one, it's very important to build trust, which is creating an environment for people to speak up, like a safe environment for people to speak up, to challenge your assumptions, and give honest feedback. Now, why humility in leadership is important now and in the future? Because humility keeps leaders grounded and adaptive. If you think that you have all the answers, you're going to miss a ton of what's next. The second element, as I mentioned, is curiosity, right? We as leaders, and everyone, like in humanity, you have to stay as a lifelong learner, right? What truly matters is not what you studied 10, 20, 30 years ago, but it's really what you're learning right now. And from a leadership perspective, right, it's like, how do you turn experience into expertise? And that happens only through self-reflection, right? And finally, curious leaders, I think they know when to ask questions and when to share, right? Now, why curiosity is important now and into the future with the amount of information that we're going to get? It's going to be abundant. It's going to be overwhelming, but wisdom is not going to be guaranteed. So curiosity is what's going to turn uncertainty into discovery, for leaders to connect the dots, and then they're going to turn that into action, and then action into learning, and then learning into improvement, and then improvement into growth, and then growth into transformation, like the Netflix story, right? And then the third one is courageous leaders, right? So you have to make sure that you have courage to experiment without fear, learn, adjust, and keep moving, right? You have to make sure that you set the bold vision, take action, even in ambiguity. And then this last one, which I think it's at the heart of legendary leadership, which is optimism and in tough times, right? And why I think courage is critical now and into the future, because courageous leadership, it's really what inspires others and keeps that momentum when the path is unclear, right? So to sum it up, AI now can help us write reports, summarize meetings, and do many other things. And in the near future, it's going to make us even smarter, right? But we cannot AI our way into humility, curiosity, and courage, right? And I believe that leaders who are great at these traits are going to be the ones who separate themselves from the pack and lead their companies into the second quarter of this century and be able to reinvent their companies and continue evolving their companies in this transformative era.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. And I love that. And here's one invitation I heard Gabriel giving to everybody on this session. Jed, what are you going to do with the extra time that you get back as a result of AI? How are you going to be an even better leader? What is it that you're going to do? And I would extend that invitation to Scott. What are you going to do with your time? Ryan, I see you're with us, but you're not on video. What are you going to do with your time now that you have more time, particularly as it relates to leadership? And we're going to send you the. Oh, Scott, I know you're going to hop in. Go ahead.
You mentioned my name. I thought I would comment very briefly. The fear that I have is there is a time savings. You can be more resourceful. You can get more tasks done. The fear I have is, or what I'm going to have to fight against, is just filling that extra time with more tasks and more productivity. Fighting that impulse is going to be tough.
Yes. And it starts with awareness. And what I heard was a lot of awareness from you, Scott, right? What I've been thinking about is this. And so my invitation is to develop that awareness. And Hannah will send you these questions. We have a list of 5 or 6 curiosity questions that I want you to check yourself to say, am I asking these questions in a meeting? And one of them is, I wonder what that could look like. Another one could be, what if we tried this? What could we do? What about this? What might be next? So you see how that language around curiosity, and we want to have you start building that into your practices, your leadership practices. You decide what are the top 3 curiosity questions that you're going to lead with. And if you're not asking them in a meeting, I wonder why. Gabrielle, anything you want to double down on or add in?
Well, probably the subject of trust. You want to like, should we do that now or?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I had to pick an element, like a double click on one element to build now and going forward is trust, right? Because you need trust for people to speak up, right? Not trust only from a good feel perspective, and why you need people to speak up, because you need problems to surface, right? And to solve them before they explode, because as a leader, you're gonna need more like unfiltered information to make better decisions, right? And not like a typical sanitized version of reality that people think you want to hear. And also when leaders create trust, in the execution aspect of the world, people stop competing against each other and start creating good execution together, right? And then I think trust is basically the ultimate multiplier, right? Especially in the world we're stepping into. And it's going to help us build candor, and candor helps with problem identification, quality in decision making, collaboration, it's all of those good things. But I wanted to share some examples of how Netflix helps in building that trust. And 3 examples, very quick. At the C-suite, they do something that's called the wells and not wells. Each member of the C-suite shares what's going well and what's going not well based on the feedback they receive, what they're learning, and what commitments they're making to improve. But the kicker is it's all captured in an open document that they share with the entire company, so the entire company can see it, and it keeps a record of the previous years so people can see the progress, right? And every time that they share it, people, you can see like thousands of people looking at the document. It's a Google Doc. Then another powerful thing that they do is when you're starting a meeting, right? So it could be a people manager, or like a manager or director or a VP. They often start a meeting in sharing like a piece of feedback that they personally receive, and they provide the context, explain how they reflected on it, and they explicitly invite people to call them out and give them feedback if they display a non-desired behavior. And finally, in town halls, they model this transparency by sharing, feedback they share with each other as leaders, right? But not the easy feedback, right? Like tough feedback. So everyone that can see that feedback flows not only from the manager to like their teams, but it flows in all directions, right? Like down up, top down. And also in town halls, it's actually very common to share things that aren't working well and the lessons learned, right? So not only the successes, right? And so this level of openness is what really builds trust for people to come forward and speak up. And it's just part of the operating system. And I think it's one of the key elements that has helped Netflix build this, engine of reinvention and improvement and transformation.
I love that, Gabrielle. The wells and the not wells was the first thing that you shared. I'm going to ask Catherine to hop in here in a second and see if she's got anything to share. And some of you have heard me share this before, but the Amazon executive team, when they got together, they would always leave an empty chair in the room. And they would say, that chair is our customer. So when we're having a conversation about whatever we're having a conversation about, let's keep the customer in mind. You can't chat GPT that. You cannot chat GPT that. Leave an empty chair. And metaphorically, that's your customer. The other thing that and I know a lot of you know Brené Brown, who's very famous for her work in vulnerability and trust. The number one thing she does in a meeting is she goes around the room and says, what's the one word that describes how you're feeling? Sarah knows this, that we do this with our leadership team. She's been in a room where we've done that work. And how might you do that with your team? How might you do that in a customer meeting? Let's start, if we're collaborating, let's start off with the one word that describes how we're stepping into this conversation. How about that? Catherine Kennedy, anything that's striking you from a story perspective at Microsoft?
Thank you for asking. I think two things. One is an observation. One observation that grew into a culture at Microsoft when Satya came in was the concept of a growth mindset. So historically, and many of you have probably experienced this. I know I have from an outside in perspective with Microsoft, but for a long time, Microsoft was a know-it-all culture. And, we were very much experts at everything. And so, when Satya came into his leadership role, his wife actually handed him the book on growth mindset and said, "You really need to read this." And so he did, and he took it to heart and then built a culture around it. And so we all very deeply practice a growth mindset, and it's not just a thing we say; it's a core value, frankly, on how we show up with each other, with customers, with partners in the ecosystem. So I would say that's the one word, is the growth mindset. One thing that I say to kind of exhibit this and practice it with my team is say more. And then I just shut up. Say more. Tell me more, expand on that. And so I really want to, and so now it's become an ism. So it's a Catherine-ism on my team, and everyone laughs. They're like, say more. And so I find pride in that. But honestly, I keep going back to the core set of principles, and that's really that guides everything. So growth mindset, the core, values and principles, this frankly results in that clarity and focus we talked about before, and the accountability for leadership. And so when you're seeing it from the top all the way through the ranks, that it's powerful and it's transformative.
And you can't fake it, right? Here's the thing that I'll say: you cannot fake it, and it has to come from the top.
It has to come from the top. And it's very interesting. It's just very interesting how, you model the behavior, others will receive it, right? You coach the behavior, others will practice it. You care about the people, and they expand on all of that, right? And that builds an ecosystem of growth mindset, of empathy, of collaboration. And so I will leave you with that. I don't know if it's helpful, but say more.
Yeah. I love it, Catherine. And I can, one of the things I love on these sessions when I can see your faces is sometimes I see the top of your head. And what that means is I know you're taking notes. And when I see you taking notes, I know that you're getting something to take away that you can implement. And so that's my greatest hope. And again, I'm going to say, we have a lot of CEOs on this call, and we have a lot of HR business partners on this call. How can we really think about bringing this to life in our organization? And, I'm always going to take it back to the business. How can we bring this to life with our customers, our patients? We do a lot of work in healthcare. And, we one of our favorite clients is Northwell Health. And Dr. Teresa Amato is a dear friend of ours. And she, has installed a practice in the emergency room. She's an ER doctor. And she said, I have told everybody on the hospital ward, do not bring me a patient unless you can tell me something personal about them. I can see all the vital signs. I can see their charts. That's the second thing I want to look at. I want you to tell me what is something personal about this patient before I start doing any work on the patient. And you see, that creates a culture of human-centered leadership. What is the one thing you're going to do? What are you going to put your flagpole down to say, that's mine? This is what I'm doing to change the culture as we see AI really coming forward. This is a quick model, and we're going to give you this. This is what we call the McGuckin Group model of connection and trust. If you operate from the perspective on the left-hand side of the page, that people deserve to feel connected. Customers, stakeholders, family members, they only trust and feel connected to authenticity. You can't fake your way into this. And authenticity is driven by vulnerability. How vulnerable are you prepared to be, right? And this is a rhetorical question. Chris, how vulnerable are you prepared to be as you talk to your people on the team? How vulnerable and telling them, here's the mistakes I made and this is what I learned. Because vulnerability is the best measure of courage, and courageous leadership builds followership, not AI. It's part of the equation, but that's not really what's going to do it. And so as we think about, you know, I always like to bottom line things, and we're going to give you this, but this idea of, you know, the trust, focus, and culture model. Here's the 3 questions I want you to ask you, your team, your customers. Will this tool that I'm using in AI increase trust, or does it risk undermining it? Does it risk undermining it? Focus. Does this tool help us with efficiency, productivity, or is it just the next shiny object? And culture. Will this tool strengthen our culture, or will it erode the human interaction? And are you prepared for those consequences? And we'll give you this. But as we start to wrap up and as we start to close, what I'd like to do is have you go into the chat and share with all of us, this is us crowdsourcing again, of the one thing that we discussed today. What is this something that you can carry forward? What has been your insight or your aha? And remember, we're going to share all of this with you at the end. I know that some folks are perhaps dialing in and some folks are on the phone, but just rest assured that we'll make sure everybody gets this information. And Catherine, I'll have you help us with curating when we'll give people a minute or two. Tell us the one thing that you're going to carry forward, and that might inspire others. I'll give you a minute here.
Things that, as we're waiting for people to answer, first of all, Gabriel, Catherine, I love hearing from the both of you, fresh perspectives on leaders in the space. We have Chris Beatty saying he's thinking more broadly about how AI impacts trust, focus, and culture versus it just being a spot tool. And how using AI can help to be a better listener. So having it summarize discussion so you can be present and maybe more human in some moments. AI can replace jobs and supply information, but it can't replace or substitute leadership. Thank you, David. Scott has a great quote from Gabriel: wisdom is not guaranteed. +1. Yes. Carrying your flagpole from Sophia, deciding what you stand for, and really going into it with that intention. Here's what it means for our culture versus just letting it happen to you. It's just everyone is really taking inspiration from the intentionality and focus.
Yeah.
Jed says servant leadership and protecting people in business as these changes are happening. I love that in the role of a leader. It's a tool and not a substitute for human interaction.
I love all of these inputs.
Yeah.
Goodness, thank you, everyone. And just as we close out here, please reach out to us. Many of you are our existing clients and customers. You know this is the work we love to do. I always get asked the question, can you train human-centered leadership? Can you develop it? And here's the answer, 100% yes, but you have to take the time. So let us connect with you. Let us continue the conversation. Reach out, and Hannah on our team will be for sure giving you access to all of these incredible materials. Thank you, everyone. It was so good to see your faces, hear your voices, see your chats, and really appreciate you all taking the time.